Welcome to the roundtable on financing for sustainable cooling for all. My name is Alisha Abraham from the WRI India Energy Program, and I will be taking you through the opening of this session. Before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping rules. The event will be recorded for documentation purposes and will be uploaded on WRI India's YouTube channel. Participants must keep their phones on silent mode. For feedback, please do drop a mail to indiaenergy@wri.org. Please scan the QR code available for event details and agenda. There will be a short questionnaire on the discussion topic during the session, for which the QR code will be displayed on the screen. We are circulating a participation sheet just for the records. Our communication team will share this with you if you haven't signed already. Online speakers are requested to stay on mute when not speaking and use the chat box for any technical assistance. Let us proceed to our session today. As India is experiencing rising temperature and frequent heat waves, the need for affordable, sustainable, and inclusive cooling solutions is becoming more urgent than ever. This roundtable will focus on two important aspects. Firstly, the impact and experiences from financing cooling solutions in India, and second, the challenges and opportunities in financing cooling services to the most vulnerable communities. Our session will run as follows. Context setting to open the discussion, a 1-hour roundtable conversation with our panel of experts, and a short Q&A session. I now invite my colleague, Mr. Deepak Tiwari, Program Research Fellow, Energy at WRI India, to set the context for the roundtable.
Thanks, Alicia. So I'll begin the brief presentation with the two key important issues that India is currently facing. As we can see from the slide, the left-hand side of the graph, it shows that India has a significantly high cooling demand in terms of, it is represented in terms of cooling degree days. So there are other countries also, and India is significantly high in terms of the cooling degree days. But at the same time, the graph also shows that there is a sort of a significantly low penetration of air conditioners in India. So India is currently having only 8 to 10% of the households own an air conditioner. So there is a huge sort of a cooling gap there. Also, if we talk about the perishable product, especially the agricultural produce, so only India's 4% of the agriculture produce passes through the cold chain infrastructure. So it again shows there is a significant gap in the cold chain infrastructure in the country, which is leading to huge post-harvest losses. The second graph, which is on the right, it is taken from the India Cooling Action Plan, and it basically projects how the India's cooling demand is going to increase in future. So it estimates that India's cooling demand will increase by 8 times by 2038, and the stock of room air conditioners will reach around 1 billion by 2050. So this sort of a huge surge in the cooling demand will lead to straining the electricity power grids, also will sort of make it more difficult, especially for the vulnerable communities, because it will worsen the climate vulnerabilities. So with this particular challenge, India needs to sort of identify energy efficient, climate friendly and sustainable cooling technologies to meet this sort of a surging demand and address this excess gaps. Now coming on to the sort of a key principle. So this particular slide shows the 5 key principles of a sustainable cooling approaches. So definitely the first and foremost is it should have a low environmental impact, where we talk about energy efficiency, low GWP refrigerants, and also how do we power some of these solutions through clean energy. The other important aspect and the second principle is on the access and equity. So cooling is not a privilege only for a few people, but it should be accessible to everyone. And I think it should be more reliable and effective. The third important principle of the cooling is on the affordability aspect. So, affordability in terms of low cost in owning the systems, operating these systems, and also maintaining. And also, there should be sort of an availability of innovative financing models to make this cooling affordable for all communities. The fourth important principle is on the climate responsive design strategies. So cooling is not only about the mechanical cooling systems. So first and foremost approach should be how do we integrate passive design systems, which basically sort of reduce the need for mechanical cooling in the first place. And then if there is a sort of a requirement to meet the cooling, then the reliance should be on the mechanical cooling. And the last and the other important aspect is on the cooling. Sort of a sustainable cooling should be resilient and should protect the livelihood operations of the communities. So these are the five principles which we think are which are based for the sustainable cooling thing. This particular slide basically shows what are the various sort of a cooling options and what type of financing mechanisms are available in the country to meet these cooling requirements. So the graph on the left side is basically a cooling pyramid that basically organizes different cooling strategies into various tiers. And if we see from top to bottom, so this is based on the accessibility also. If we move from top to bottom, it shows that accessibility of these solutions increases. Suppose we go for the urban cooling measures where nature-based solutions like green roofs, urban forests, urban planning aspects are covered. So these solutions will be accessible to a larger and wider network of population. While if we consider only air conditioners, so it will be only available to only premium class peoples or affluent people. So this particularly shows that when we move from top to bottom, the accessibility increases, and also means while we are planning for some of these cooling related solutions, so the approach or prioritization should also focus in that particular manner, starting with the urban cooling measures, moving to passive building design measures, and then finally relying on the air conditioners. So these are some of the sort of a basic interventions. And how do we enable these interventions? So there are various sort of a financing mechanisms there. So public financing, private financing, blended financing options are there, and there are few examples of various financing instruments that are currently being used in India. Next slide. Coming on to the sort of key examples of some of these sustainable cooling financing. So some of these, most of these financing solutions has been used in a very scattered manner. And there has been a challenge in scaling up of these particular financing solutions. So some of these interventions like Urban Forest and Nature Conservancy Park by BMC in Mumbai has been created by State Department funds. Then there has been several models like cooling as a service model where farmers are provided access to clean cold storages at the farm level. Also, there has been some CSR funds being utilized for cold storages near the farm gates for the farmers. Also, organizations like Mahila Housing Trust are offering small loans to their members to buy heat resilient paints. So there has been some examples. However, the main challenge has been on how do we scale up these particular solutions and these financing models. So with this sort of a context setting presentation, I'll stop now, and then maybe we'll move on to the roundtable discussion where we'll discuss and we will hear some of the insights from our expert speakers on the key learnings and findings that they have seen in their experiences on how we can scale up the sustainable financing for cooling options. So I'll hand it over to Sumedha now. Over to you, Sumedha.
Thanks, Deepak. And so, just to sort of make sure that, we all know each other, we wanted to do a quick round of introductions. We have Ms. Ruchira Shukla joining us online from Synapsis VC. Ruchira, if you can hear us, probably we can start with you and then we can go around the room.
Here, everyone, and thank you to WRI for organizing this roundtable on this supremely important topic. I am Ruchira. I'm an engineer turned investor. I was leading IFC's technology investment business in South Asia. I was with IFC for 12 years and have now, as of last year, left to start a climate fund that is focused on engineering innovations for climate. So cooling is a very important part of that solution, both from a mitigation standpoint as well as from a resilience and adaptation standpoint, as we're all dealing with increasing heat stresses. So I'm very happy to be here today and looking forward to contributing to this fabulous fund.
Great. Thanks a lot for joining online, Ruchira. I'll start on the right side of to me on the right side. So, Gyan sir, and then we can go around the table. So, you can introduce yourself, sir, please.
I'm Gyan Madgal. Good morning to everybody. I am here as team lead HCL Climate Force Fund, which is working towards energy efficient and sustainable cooling solutions in the built environment, including decarbonization of embodied as well as operational carbon. That's what we are trying to surface various kind of innovations. We have a challenge. We will speak later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Joyita Mukherjee. I am also an International Finance Corporation alum. I was there for about 12 years and was with the World Bank for 13 years before that, so I'm that old. Left IFC about 5 years ago, and now, together with another former colleague at IFC, I have set up a venture capital fund called Coolpack Capital that is focused entirely on making equity investments in small and medium companies here in India that are working on sustainable cooling solutions. Thank you.
Sit on. Good morning, all. I am Mini Sugumar. I am a member of Kerala State Planning Board, an expert member on gender and development, school education, and social justice portfolios. And I was basically a teacher. I was teaching women's studies for 20 years in this Department of Women's Studies at University of Calicut.
Hi everyone, I'm Priya. I work with WRI and primarily focus on a lot of work on nature-based solutions and also on integrating NBS essentially in an urban sphere. So that's my... And I'm Samedha. I work with the energy team at WRI India, where I lead the work we do around building decarbonization and sustainable cooling. I'll be one of the facilitators for the discussion today.
Hi everyone, I'm Prashant. I'm also with the WRA Energy team, leading the private sector participation role in the Extras Energy Pillar program. Thanks. I'm co-facilitating along with Sumedha today. Thanks.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rishika Das Roy. I lead sectoral strategy at the India Climate Collaborative, looking to learn more about how philanthropy can support build out the ecosystem on cooling and heat and a more integrated approach on both.
Hi, my name is Abuli Moranjan. I'm from Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, India. We primarily work on heat mitigation and decarbonization as well in formal and informal sectors, and we'll be briefing about the project later on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nabeen Roy, and I work as General Manager at National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, fondly called as NABARD. And we have a lot of work to do on climate space, and including things that bring synergy and take things forward for small and marginal farmers, small and marginal entrepreneurs. Whatever is micro, NABARD is always there for mitigating their issues and challenges. So most of it will be, I think we'll be covering in during the rounds that we'll do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Anshpan Siddhant from United Nations Environment Program. I'm leading the India Cold Chain program on sustainable cold chains and trying to scale up investments in sustainable cold chains, mostly prioritizing rural level pack houses with renewable energy technologies and energy efficient technologies. We are currently doing pilots and projects in Bihar and Haryana and Tamil Nadu, and we're trying to scale it up across India and bring that support and benefit to the farmers, the farmer producer organizations, heat livelihoods for the women and the youth in the rural area, and with the support obviously from the central government and also the state government on both three states. So looking forward to having this discussion and getting your views. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi everyone, this is Afsha. I represent IFC, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank. And what we are majorly doing is I represent the Green Buildings team. We play a key role in facilitating a lot of the investments which IFC has to offer both directly and indirectly to the market in India. And I think through the course, I'll also be sharing a lot on some exciting new investments that we've made in the market. And I'm sure a lot of us can benefit of those conversations. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for the introductions by all our esteemed roundtable discussants. We can start the discussion. The way we have structured this is that we would like to hear from the public sector, referring basically the state departments first, and then we would go on to talking to the implementation partners on the ground on what they have been experiencing as far as these implementation of the solutions is concerned, and then we would engage with the private sector and public financing institutions. So to begin with, I'm going to point my questions to Mini ma'am. Ma'am, you have been with the State Planning Board, which is working directly with the state government departments on planning activities, but also spending and allocating budgets for different types of infrastructure projects or other activities. Ma'am, in your experience, where do you see the role of heat resilient infrastructure coming in as far as working with these departments is concerned? Your specific portfolio is Department of Education and Women and Child Development. So maybe if you could talk a bit about that, ma'am.
Regarding the role of the planning board, you are asking. Yes. Yeah. In Kerala, we are taking a somewhat different mode for the planning process because we are still following the 5-year plan mode, and planning board has a crucial role in establishing the interdepartmental collaborations, allocations, and making budgets, annual budgets for the government. In that process, we start with the 14th 5-year plan in 2022 with working groups on different areas. Regarding to our discussion thing, we have a working group on disaster management, for which the climate change, disaster management and environmental protection is being addressed. That working group is a group of experts coordinated by the State Planning Board. We have 32 other working groups in spanning across different sectors. And this particular working group is forming a perspective plan for the 5 years, a long-term thing, and also some directions for the future planning of to the annual plans and a review of the current the status of the ongoing projects. In this in the 14th 5-year plan, it is under the perspective planning division of the State Planning Board. It is talking about the future climate projections, the planning based on the future climate projections, and a risk-informed planning for the line departments as well as to the local self-government institutions. And here also, it is pointing about the demographic transitions, the rapid urbanization, and the land use changes happening in Kerala, which are the crucial issues while we are working with the climate mitigation strategies in the state. For that, in that process, the line departments, usually our planning process is like that. Every year, with the planning circle starts with the July, August at that point, and all departments come with their proposals to the planning board, and there is 2-level discussions with the members who are concerned with, and then the ministers who are also involving in finalizing the proposals of each department. And at the local self-government, the development plans at the local level is planned by local self-governments itself, the panchayats and block panchayats and the district panchayats. They have working group on, there's a district level working group on disaster management that also look into the climate change aspects also. And there they prepare the local specific projects. Some are smaller projects and some are combined project with a number of local self-governments together. And it is vetted and submitted to the district plan committees, and the district plan committees are approving those projects. So regarding the resource allocation, which Sumedha is asking about the budgeting part, the state plan is consists of the state plan, but the budget is consists of state plan. That means the centrally sponsored schemes and the state annual plan, and a portion of the state plan is directly allocated to the local self-government institutions. The current year it is the 28% of the total state plans. So quite some amount. It is directly allocated to the state plan, to the local self-governments, and that is divided into different local self-governments according to their annual plan proposals. So that is the way we are dividing the allocation. So the one positive thing is that the local self-governments can come forward with their own plans. And they have a working group which is directly looking to the disaster management and climate resilience. Disaster management is the overarching thing because that was the major concern of the previous years, and now their objectives are little expanded, like the climate mitigations and other things. In that process, the district plan officers are coming under the state planning board. So there is an alignment between the state level line department programs and the district level projects, district level and the projects at the block panchayats and gram panchayats. Also, the major all the implementing officers from different sectors are coming from the line departments. Like for the school education, if there is a project at the district level, block level or the gram panchayat level, the officer concerned with the school education is the implementing officer. For the Anganwadis and schools, the projects directly related to the Anganwadis is implemented by the ICDS supervisor at the Gram Panchayat level, and the school headmasters or headmistresses by the at the Gram Panchayat level. At district level also it is like that. So we can have this space to intervene into this process of planning. That the crucial role done by the planning state planning board is like we are coordinating all these different agencies at the level of discussions and also directing them with what would be the future directions in that particular area. I have come into contact with the WRI because of the two interventions in Kerala, like one in the Gram Panchayats, 2 Gram Panchayats about the heat stress related issues, and another one is done in Kochi Corporation in the Anganwadis, where the heat stress is a major concern. And in these 2 Gram Panchayats, they have already come forward. They have already identified the program with their hotspots, like identified by the Kerala State Disaster Management Authority. So they have a previous plan on that. And one of the panchayats come forward with the removing the roof by the asbestos roofs by some other material. And I was still remembering that Panchayat President was talking about the issues, how the issue is crucial to them, because he was very sensitive towards the situation at the ground level, because he was talking about the history of that particular Panchayat. They are almost all the houses are by people who are displaced from some other parts, and they came into this panchayat years ago, and they built their houses with whatever cheaper material available. So more than half of the houses are built by the roofs are by the asbestos. Now it's a major concern for them. They wanted to have a project, a local specific project to remove the roofs. Then came the major hurdles, like whether the private houses can be supported by the government? Is that possible with the other government orders and other things? And what are the cheaper materials or the good materials available as a technology option? And there are so many things up there. So they are identifying these issues, and they are searching for the solutions. This is the process we are doing. And in my experience, the major hurdles or the major block they are experiencing is one is the information gap and the technology gap. The information about about heat stress and the impact of the heat stress, and what are the mitigation plans and solutions available, and which is affordable and accessible. So that 2 points are very important, I think, that equity, access, and then the affordability. This is very important, and how far the technology is available at the ground level. These two gaps are there. So we have to work on that two gaps, like giving more information to this local self-government institutions and other departments, and also to support them with some sort of technology options.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. That was a very comprehensive answer, right from the interventions that are starting right at the planning level to the type of projects which local self-government institutions can undertake. Now, Kerala has a very unique governance model anyway as a state. So there's a lot to learn from the different steps in the process that you just outlined. And since you were talking about projects and solutions on the ground, I would like to now segue to Anshuman, who's here representing UNEP, working on the cold chain side. Now, Anshuman, with your experience working in several states on cold chain infrastructure, and right from, micro storage to pack houses to the different systems within a cold chain facility. Could you talk to us about what has been your experience with certain technologies and infrastructure solutions which are right now, in your view, most feasible? Feasible for financing, particularly targeting the most vulnerable groups. And here we're talking about farmer producer organizations, but those tackling, say, small and marginal farmers. So could you talk about what these solutions are, what types of financing is available, and where do you see the role of integration of public finance and private financing for delivering this? And if you could take just, 5 minutes to just sort of summarize.
Yeah, thank you, Sumita. I mean, very pertinent question, and thank you for asking that question, because I think when it comes to, cold chain, I mean, we have to understand that today we are, facing a huge lot of food loss in terms of, fresh fruit and vegetables and horticulture produce across India. And if you see, the percentages are varying from state to state, from say, 20% to 30%, and some places is 40% as well. So I think, looking at these challenges and the lack of cold chain that is actually, it's the reason why this food loss cannot be controlled. UNEP with the state governments and the central government, with Ministry of Environment and Forest and Bureau of Energy Efficiency and Ministry of Agriculture, we have designed this project and program in terms of implementing in pilot projects in Bihar, Haryana, and Tamil Nadu. And mostly what facilities that we see is having the highest gap is that the rural level pack house, which is the first point of any cold chain that is there in any state or any region. So pack house being the first infrastructure, which is one of the most technologically well versed component of the cold chain, needs to be integrated with energy efficient technology and renewable energy technologies. This is what we found, that at the state level, obviously, even if there was central level schemes and government schemes to support this kind of infrastructures, but the state level, the implementation was not that great, and the traction at the state level was not trickling on. So we'll working at the state governments try to find out solutions where feasible financing can be given to this kind of infrastructures through the farmer producer organizations and also the self-help groups, women self-help groups. So in Haryana, for example, what we did was we supported, the designing of model DPRs to support this kind of pack houses, to support through the JICA funding that Haryana has got, which is around 2,700 crores today for deployment of sustainable cold chains and pack houses across the state. And the whole idea is to bring in almost 500 pack houses in the next 10 years in Haryana, which is connected to the Markham and also connected with the smaller cold rooms at the backyard. So just to give you the more detailed version of a pack house, a pack house actually is the first point of cooling that is introduced to a produce. So where the produce is pre-cooled and then is stored in a transient cold room for onward transfer to a reefer transport to be connected to distribution centers and distribution hubs across India, so that there is a coal supply chain that is end to end without any broken links between that. So that was the whole idea of cold chain, is to be more connected and without any breakages, and so that it is seamless from the farm gate to the reaches the consumers. And cooling being the factor which is transient throughout the supply chain process. So we cannot compromise with the whole aspect of cooling, and we're trying to make this as an example where in Bihar as well we're trying to support the Department of Cooperative with the detailed project report for a sustainable pack house, which will be the first net zero pack house in India, and it will be based on solar power, renewable energy technology. It is also utilizing natural refrigerants like ammonia, which is zero ozone depleting and zero GWP. So these are the kind of environmental integrations, environmentally friendly technologies that we are trying to integrate with the help of the state government, where Department of Cooperative gives the financing for this sort of cold chain projects, so that it can be scaled up across the state.
It's a pilot at this stage.
So it's a pilot. So we have just submitted a DPO, but thankfully the department has agreed to fully finance it and also finance 4 other.
What is the size of the facility?
So this cars facility is a bit bigger because it has throughput capacity of 40 metric tons per day. So the whole capacity of the whole pack house is 5 to 10 metric ton pre-cooler with 45 metric tons of storage, which is transient storage. But we have integrated with the solar power energy to power it.
So just quickly get your thoughts on what does it need in terms of or learn from that model from across India to scale this model and adopt this, right? So what are the quick thoughts, 2 or 3 things that we need for that?
So I think, to scale it, and we have the central scheme where MIDH and NHB is giving 35 to 50%. And we also have the, biggest support, which is the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, which is around, 1 lakh crore, giving you the 3% subvention on your loan and up to 2 crores. And there is no collateral for it. So if you scale up, this kind of infrastructures, because each and every pack house will not cost you more than 2 crores, even less than that. Certain matters, it depends on the capacity. So it is very important that how, if scale up across India, how we utilize the the blended financing that is there available from MIDS subsidies, 35%. In northeast region and Himalayan region is 50%. And the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, just for your knowledge, I'll give you is how Haryana, the total allocation is around 3,900 crores, which is sitting idle and no one is using it. I think till now only 200 crores have been used in so many years. So no, these are the funds that are available, but the awareness is not there, and even the state has to actually create such kind of mechanisms and facilities, financing facilities, where the FPOs and farmers can take advantage of such initiatives, and this is how you can scale it up. Even Ministry of Food Processing and Industries has a scheme for food processing and cold chain, which is the Prime Minister's Kisan Sampada Yojana.
Right.
So this is also where they give 50% grant upfront, which is up to 10 crores. I think if you want to build in the livelihood for rural area and connect it to export markets through the schemes of Ministry of Food Processing, there's a huge opportunity for application across the country.
So several sources of financing, as you're mentioning, split across multiple ministries, which could be targeted. So I'll come back to that later in the conversation, but shifting gears again to talk about another aspect of housing and looking at cooling for, housing for the most vulnerable communities. I'll talk to Aboli about that here. Aboli, AKH or Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, has been working on the ground with informal settlements. They are usually considered to be a very difficult segment to engage, given that it's informal sector. And you're talking about informal housing. So, what has been your experience with, firstly, the solutions themselves, but also looking at different sources of financing? I believe you mentioned that the sources have been largely CSR grants. Do we consider them to be more sustainable sources of financing in the future? And what are some of the gaps in your view to target not just informal housing, but even looking at housing for most vulnerable communities in terms of low-income housing, how they can be covered with the cooling solutions that you have been implementing in multiple cities now?
So regarding cooling, when we talk about it, there are two sectors, of course, formalizing on the residential sector around 40 to 50% of GHG emissions within a city limit comes from the residential sectors. And to target that would be through, going through an existing model of what the dense fabric is already laid out in a city through green retrofitting strategy. That's one point to look at it. However, coming back to the informal sector and the most vulnerable population that we are talking about, in the first slide, Deepak spoke about an top-down approach in terms of assessing, where you go to urban areas and then come down to ACs. But ultimately, through records, it's shown that for vulnerable population, these asbestos sheets or cement sheets, which are there as a roofing material, those actually trap heat more, and 5 degrees is much more hotter inside the house than it is outside. So, in terms of targeting the interventions, I believe that this is the first scenario and the step that should be taken across. In terms of implementation, when we begin with the work, we normally look up to state to see if there are any central grants available or funding sources available. However, states normally are, stimulators. They can't be drivers. The people on field are drivers. And given the fact that heat mitigation or cooling really does not appear as a budget line, it gets buried under housing or health or education system. Even in terms of financing, which has been allotted for budgets, for Mumbai, if I can take an example, under environmental or even under climate funds, around 90% goes in for flooding. There's hardly more left for heat mitigation, as to say. So for us to demonstrate, or even go to a donor to pitch it out, it was very imperative to show a proof of concept. This was, of course, done through a self-funding where we piloted around 126 houses through different solutions, wood wool, alufoil, ventilation, because hot and humid climate in Mumbai, like forced ventilation was one of the basic criteria that had to be taken care of. Piloting actually helped us reach out to more organizations and show them through data logos, through monitoring and evaluation, how exactly this project has been sustainable over 1 year period of time. In terms of affordability, even if we go down to ground level and talk to these people, it's very difficult for a household to have like 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees. It's a very high fees for them, where they really put it out for rent or school or food. Cooling is not really in the list, even though they fall under heat risk. And even in this informal settlements, most of them are renters. And who actually buys solutions, who puts it? The owners do. But since it's not benefiting them directly, they're like, hum to de, rent hi to kar rahe hai karke. So how do you really take that ahead? That was a major issue. And as we were talking about the roofs being 5 degrees more hotter inside, these financial products or metrics or framework really do not target women or home-based livelihood, occupations which are actually at the maximum heat risk. So getting those into consideration or even piloting, it was a huge challenge for us because there is no vendor-based like aggregate market setup in place because there was no demand. It's priced at a too high level, and for us to get it down in scattered matter, the vendors weren't really able to reduce the prices down at all. So the allocation of all these big projects really need to be targeted because we normally look for bigger things, bigger infrastructure in a city level to target, but you should start it from a small down approach and move ahead. So these were a few gaps that we were finding on ground, and what really helped us was to inculcate the ASHA workers and the local Mahila Mandals which were there. They have Bachat Guts, which are their own financing model. So have the savings through the implementation can come into picture with the municipal finances and CSR. So it needs to have like a plural financing model where we are looking for all these matrices coming together. So maybe CSR can start off with putting in an upfront allocation for money. The municipal state can go ahead and scale it up and put majorly in the operation and maintenance. Budget cuts can come into picture and look for small piece of this project. And there are a lot of insurances which are available. So, because of heat risk, many laborers or many people miss out on their wages that they collect during the day. But if they normally don't prioritize their own safety on missing out their wages. So if you are in Chandrapur, for to say, if I am missing out on a day's work, I really won't be able to survive or sustain anymore. So insurance policies should try targeting settlements and areas and people who are most vulnerable and make it accessible to them.
Yeah. No, thanks. And I think in our research, we've only found one example of NHT doing that successfully with other communities in Gujarat. And I believe it's trying to also expand it to other places. Very interesting points, Aboli, particularly on building of capacity at the lowest level. And I'm wondering, I'm moving to my colleague Priya. In our experience with this, a really nice way of saying nature-based solutions is essentially just establishing several types of heat sinks in a city, right? So do your greening right, do your blue zones right, and you would have a cool city. And if you had seen the sustainable cooling pyramid, urban cooling is through NBS, has the largest access possible, but it's least invested in. So Kim and Pop, from your experience working on implementation, what has been, firstly, what types of solutions have been tried? Again, it's the same question as Aboli, what has been the financing sources? But when were you found the opportunities in city financing, in city budgets? I believe that's something we are trying in both Bombay and Bangalore. Thanks. And thanks, Aboli, because I think just taking segue from what you said, I think definitely, and towards I think Dr. Amita this morning in the plenary highlighted, people definitely are the key to whatever you want to do. And in our experience over the last 4+ years working across, different cities, so Jaipur, Mumbai, Kochi, Nalgonda, and Bangalore, we've done a fair bit of nature-based solution implementation across scales. So, and it is also to mitigate heat and multitude of other things. So NBS is not specifically for one thing, but, flood, response spaces are also for both flood and heat and multiple things. But just focusing on heat here, I think one of the big things I think that has worked, and in terms of funding, I think like Avoli rightly mentioned, I think the private sector has been the seed funder or that stimulator, because you have to start somewhere, start with something, and very often these are those private funding or philanthropies whose financing we use. But there's also been a transition because we've been able to cobblestone different funds together or put them together, like bind them together. And one of the examples I think Deepak also shared is the Marol Conservation Park, so which is done in Mumbai, where I think MIDC gave the land to do the conservation the park, urban conservancy park. BMC invested in really some of these components. I wouldn't call it infrastructure in the NBS world, but some of the components which you put on ground. So I think there was this kind of commitment from different agencies to really translate NBS. And I think one of the biggest difficulties of NBS is because ultimately it's just green, or blue, which is natural resource, which is freely available. So there's not much of value given to it because it's freely, or we assume it's freely available, while in reality it is really not so easy right now. So I think just pushing that conversation, bringing that thinking change in people has been extremely difficult. But of course, with these 5 different cities and with different typologies of interventions that we have done, I think primarily we have pushed for urban forests and different typologies of urban forests. So as WRI, we've always tried to push for urban forests which are a little accessible, which are also useful for people around, and it's not just like a forest where people can't do, because land is limited in an urban space. So you also need to use the land very productively for everyone, for both nature and people together. So one of the big examples, and that we've done in Kochi, and Kochi Corporation has been part of it, is the Kawa Keys. So the mayor of Kochi was a key leader in pushing the Kawa Key initiative. So which was just small urban groves in different parts of the city, where of course we used data layers and evidence to identify the most vulnerable hotspots. But then we also did these Kawa Keys, where the biggest shift there was the Kudumbashri, the self-help government in Kerala. So they were paid by the local self-government. So they had a budget line finally for urban greening, where for the 3 years they are getting paid. They're still getting paid. So we have to crack that. So they're still getting paid by the local self-government to really maintain the Kawa Keys. So one of the biggest issue with NBS is not really implementation, but just maintenance. Even if it's like 100 saplings, I think just maintaining those 100 saplings is the biggest issue. So I think in Kochi, we've been able, at least little with the budgetary allocation in the municipal corporation, like a very minuscule amount of say 10 to 12 lakhs. But year on year, there is some budget that's going for operation and maintenance of whatever XYZ, and which is not necessarily the implementation that we have spearheaded, but anything that's happening on ground. Similarly, I think in Bangalore now, WRI was one of the key partners in putting out the Bangalore Climate Action Plan, and as a continuation of the Bangalore Climate Action Plan with an institutional setup called the Climate Action Cell, we were able to actually put in like a special commissioner who takes on day-to-day tasks, because very often cells and special purpose vehicles also, it's very difficult for the functioning of it. And one of the key things that, all the CSRs also, we had many rounds of conversation with CSRs there, was how do we do greening? And then, and when it comes to greening, it's horrible because everybody wants to do greening everywhere, which is not practical. So then we started working with the city, with the different stakeholder groups there and different ecosystem partners, and a few of them are here. So Vishwanath sir is here. So recharge wells, urban greening. So these different components, which all attribute in the at a bigger scale for climate resilience and heat in general. So I think we worked with the Climate Action Cell to really put out this integrated SOP, so Blue Green Infrastructure SOP, which is going to come out in the public domain very soon, to really do right interventions at the right place. So the governments, city governments and the state governments across India have cracked the native species. Everybody knows what is native, everybody knows what is non-native. But where do you really do this greening, which will then, give that benefit for the system, that matrix you're talking about. So this is a work in progress, and this is good because then at least there's a systemic transition of identifying the right location to do some kind of intervention. So how it translates, we'll have to wait and watch over the next 10 years, but at least it's in place. And the other I'll have to pause you here because and we'll come back to this, because there are many things which you talked about, but what stayed with me is the fact that I think both Aboli and you spoke about CSR, and the word corporate social responsibility has sort of stuck out there. And I'm wondering if it would be a good idea to talk to Ruchira here online, because I believe, Ruchira, when we were chatting about this discussion, you had mentioned that there is a very strong role for the corporate sector here. I'm wondering if you would want to touch upon the things that you spoke about. How does the corporate sector come in when we think about de-risking investments? in technologies which will support the most vulnerable groups. Currently, are they there in the thinking? If you're looking at people who are left out of access to cooling, where does the private sector headed in that direction, and what do you see the corporates to be really focusing on?
Such big topics, there's so much corporates can do. And I think we as a of that, but there's a lot more that can be done. But as I say, capital is philanthropic capital, and still large parts of it goes to health, education, health topics like HIV and women's education. So people have still to recognize it as a big issue. And I think we have enough proof points for that to happen. Except among that is common at us at an unprecedented space on DSC repercussions. So the recognition is coming. But as a within that, people wake up to the whole. So that too want for the kind of unbiased solutions that we were just discussing, where commercialization of those solutions and getting private sector participation will be difficult. We want CSR and philanthropic capital to come in. The other bit that I would talk about and building on some of the remarks that were made earlier. Cooling was needed for various segments of the market, right? There's suburban cooling or residential cooling, but then there's urban poor requiring cooling. Their affordability, as was discussed, is much lower. There's also commercial and industrial setups that need cooling, like cooling off the factory floors, but they also need cooling of products that are then let out into different environmental zones and can harm. And then there is storage and supply chain cooling that was discussed. And for all of these, what I'd like to see of as a venture fund that wants to back innovation of product solutions that are completely ambiguous, thought through from a first principles perspective. And there are a bunch of these innovations out there, but not enough. And I think that is need to have this virtuous circle where all these solutions are well supported in their journey to market. There is commercial adoption, there is profits that rely on private capital, and part will then set that virtuous cycle where more such solutions can come out of labs. But in most cases, the choke point is when the product works fine in the lab, but then doesn't get the right commercial testing and validation support, or pilots. And sometimes there are pilots where there's no feedback post the pilot, and the solution dies either dearly or soon after the pilot. So we need that full chain of lab support, testing and certification support, pilot support to a commercial contract. And at all those levels, there's more philanthropic capital that can make that testing and validation possible, because at that point, there are not enough proof points for private capital to participate. But as those testing and validation, private and philanthropic need to come together. The blending needs to happen for pilots, because it's still not complete risk, and there are bias from the pilot which will result in product iterations. And at some point, there's enough of a comfort and there's a commercial contract possible. There's 40 private capital to take over the support. So I think at different levels of that journey, at different stages, may need different components on private and public or philanthropic money. Right? So I think getting these different capital pools to work together is important. And to a pointed question about how corporates can play the role, they can play the role from a CSR perspective, but that philanthropic capital that should be more patient, should be able to absorb the high risk. But during the later stages, they can be the testers of these technologies, or all the farm, ribbing developers, real estate guys. These guys should be piloting, I don't know, the major efficient appliances, different retailers for rooftops, MK solutions for large developments, multi-housing units that are, built by some of these developers on the hearts of Bombay and Delhi, and also Toyota India, which is now increasingly getting concrete structures and concrete islands, urban heat islands that are being created, not to test these solutions there. And then as they scale, large office campuses should be buyers of these solutions. We need to show commercial viability for capital to come in at scale.
So, Richard, I think building on that, if you have to look at from a most vulnerable communities point of view, what would it take in terms of for the access to reach to the ground and for these innovations to scale for the most vulnerable communities? And what would that success look like to happen from an innovation point of view, capital point of view as well?
I think when these solutions first come out of the lab, they tend to be at price points that are not affordable for the most vulnerable population. And the round table participant earlier was talking about, and I forget who it was about, the fact that if they 1,000 and 2,000 rupees, they always prioritize food and education, which is how, which is one, like these are essentials. And oftentimes, the incentive structures are not set up for the owners of those houses to invest, and renters cannot afford. So I think the early price points will either need heavy subsidy or support, but also in the product stack, a lot of these innovations will have to come on top down. So they go out into a large commercial setup where either corporates or the more affordable segments pay for them, and our profit pools there then subsidize some solution or maybe a more customized bespoke solution which is lower cost for the vulnerable populations. So I think of it as a product stack. It's not the same product for the rich and the other people who can actually afford. The privileged class will have a different product at a different price points than the vulnerable population.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think building on that, what we can look at is maybe I'll move to Joyita to you to understand a little bit more on how, because you've been building this fund, sustainable cooling fund from a long time, and there has been this targets also that are there. But how is it that, can you elaborate a little bit more on this blended finance model as well, to what Ruchira was saying and also what we from other speakers as well? How that can work on the market and what would it take for adoption as well. So if you can throw some light on that.
Sure. So I'll go directly to your question because I think we're running a little tight on time, right? So what we are trying to do at Coolpad Capital is exactly try to address the issue of access, right? So basically what you need for access is affordability and scale. And so that's what you want to attack. And then with scale also comes affordability because you have natural economies of scale and so on. So the idea is somehow to try to get companies that are innovating products, sustainable cooling products, basically reach a scale and a size where the things that they make, the products that they produce, become more affordable, and they are able to penetrate deeper into the market, as well as get general scale. So move both laterally and a little bit deeper vertically into the market space. So one set of solutions is to help these companies achieve that. And that's what we at Coolpad Capital are trying to do. We ourselves are offering a blended finance, a blended fund, where we are pooling concessional funds from donors or other concessional investors together with commercial capital in the fund to be able to invest in these companies. So the commercial capital is looking for commercial risk and reward returns, whereas the companies that are innovating the solutions are not quite there yet. They're still financially a little bit weak. They don't have sufficient profitability and so on and so forth. So you bring in a layer of concessional capital and you blend the money in order to be able to give the commercial investors the returns that they're looking for, which are essentially being subsidized by the concessional capital that's either from a public source or from philanthropic sources or from climate finance sources and so on. But that's what we are trying to do at Coolpack Capital, and that is addressing one issue in terms of how you get to scale and affordability. The other one, I think Ruchira said it better than I could, so I won't repeat what she said. But the other is obviously at the stage where you are trying to get a product or a technology or a business model that's outside the pilot zone into scale. And then she articulated the very many ways you could do that. The other interesting thing that I have noticed is the adoption, and this I bring some experience from working in other markets, specifically in sub-Saharan Africa, where we were trying to get households to, this is while I was at IFC, where we were trying to get households to adopt low-cost, sustainable lighting solutions. And one of the barriers there at the market was about quality. So if you're a low-income household, you only have so much outlay for what you may think is a non-essential commodity like cooling or lighting. And so if you're going to buy that product, it has to be something that's going to last. And we found that there was a lot of spoilage in the market by low-cost, cheap products that people would buy and would not, that would not work, and it would completely turn them off against that. So I think the point that Ruchira was making about verification, validation, quality control, that is a space. I'm not familiar enough with the India cooling segment at that level to know if that's an issue or not. But if that is an issue, that is a space where public and certainly nonprofit organizations like yourselves can help girdle so that you're building a strong foundation for people who have very little choices in how they make outlays of their household budgets, can be assured that if they buy such and such a product, that it is something that will last them. So adoption is key, but the barrier to adoption, particularly in vulnerable communities, is quality. Yeah. Along with affordability.
That's an interesting point, but how do we look at it from, let's say, a large part of these investment trends are determined top-down largely. So how do we, what are the gaps that are there in terms of, reaching to the most vulnerable communities, and how do we address those? What kind of solutions are required from that point of view?
So solutions can be, I think India is actually rife with a lot of solutions, particularly targeting low-income households, right? So like you can have payment plans, you can have lease to own, you can have local service provision. So solutions, I think there are many. Right now on the cooling side, there's two things. One is, I truly think, one is awareness among financiers and funders, and with them I'm including philanthropic funders on the importance of cooling in the pantheon, if you will, of needs for development. The lack of cooling is a development issue. It sort of shaves points off of GDP. It shaves number of days people can work outside. It shaves their productivity. So that is one set of problems, and then the second set of problems is affordability. And I think if we can get at both of them, then we'll be able to make some headway.
Perfect. I think that awareness among funders, financiers, I think is quite what you highlighted as well. So maybe I'll move to Afsar, to you, considering your experience of not only working locally but internationally as well, whether through the Tech Emerge Fund or the BLC initiative on the construction side that are there. So what has been your experience on, from a green housing point of view or cooling point of view as well? And how is that engagement with the financial institutions also has been on the ground?
Right. Yeah. So IFC has, cooling has always been a key area of focus for IFC, right? And we've been trying to support this sector both directly. When I say directly, I mean by directly investing in the cooling solution and the innovation, like a few other people on the table are doing. And indirectly as well, where the piece of the puzzle that they're talking about, the BLC work, and I'll speak about that, comes in, which is by investing in the project itself, right, which is going green. Because what we've seen in the market is to go beyond a stipulated amount of energy saving, or actually an attempt to become more energy efficient, if I can say, right, so that you're decreasing demand. A big overhaul to the HVAC system becomes key. And if I was to quantify this in numbers, from a business as usual scenario, if you want to go greener, say by a minimum 20%, let's say I want to be 20% better, mild innovation is enough. Pick up a 5-star instead of a 2-star, it'll help you get to your 20%. But the minimum you want to get to a 40%, to 50%, to 60%, you want to get onto the pathway of zero carbon, major overhauls start coming in, which in turn need capital. And that's also something that IFC has been financing. We have been doing it with the large players for very long, but in 2020, we realized there was a huge market of the vulnerable people that were actually suffering. So we explored some idea of gap financing and how we can actually bring in green into that conversation. And that's when this entire project on the BLC-led construction came in. So what was happening is typically a person who's building something within that category is getting 2, 3, 4 lakhs, depending on different policies by different states, as an incentive upfront cash to build whatever they have to. But at times that's not enough for them to build, or at times due to lack of expertise within the construction sector in that area, they are misled into wasting that money. Simple example, maybe a house needs 4 pillars, but they end up building 8 and now the money is gone. What did they do about the rest? They can't just stay in a house with 4 pillars and no roof. So gap financing became an important segment, and all of these HFCs, housing finance companies, were looking into this segment. So we tied hands with 8 different HFCs over the course from 2020 up to date. Some of the names are Aavas, Aadhaar, IIFL, Home First. What we are doing with these is, first and foremost, definitely capacity building and awareness, because there has to be some level of acceptance and commitment by the owner of the house that, yes, I'm ready to go green. In actuality, most of the times they're not able to understand. They're still just going for it because they're getting money in lieu of a commitment that they don't completely understand. But it's still okay for us, right? It's not utmost important for them to be 100 on 100 clear on what it means to be green. So what we are doing in that project is that you pick up an area, you understand acceptance and commitment, you do a due diligence, and then you pick up a set of homes which are then financed by these HFCs along with technical support and quantifiable certification that we provide at IFC. And we generally provide the ED certification because quantifiability is very important for any investor, I would say, and most of the people on this table would agree. With buildings, one big issue that we as investors always faced in many years was using terminologies like gold, silver, platinum. What does that mean? Right? So we needed something quantifiable. I should be able to come and tell you I'm 30% better than how I would be. So that EDGE certification sort of helped. We are not funding any of these projects. The HFCs bring in the money, but we fund our own resource time for the technical help, which in itself is a lot. We've subsidized the certification quite a lot. We are charging 4,500 rupees only for a certificate that is coming in from the BLC-led construction segment. And people who are going in for this project are getting their loans at an interest rate that's anywhere between 0.25 to 0.5% cheaper. That's really important for this segment because in any case, they have nothing as collateral to show, right? So the only collateral that these people are putting up front is their own house that the HFC is financing in this case. And their rate of interest is more than what you and me would get in the bank if we go today.
Yeah.
So still to be able to tap into that number and bring it down by a substantial percentage and at the same time get them to go green with certain measures is a big win-win.
Yeah.
As far as the cooling bit is concerned, because that's a key word for our discussion here today, most of these houses at this point in time are not ready, maybe psychologically or even otherwise, to put up an air conditioner. So we are definitely exploring a lot of measures on passive cooling, shading, insulation, better paint quality, better roofing material, etc., which is substantially helping them be better than how they were. Because, right? But that does not mean they will not need cooling or they will not build the appetite to actually install an air conditioner, if not today, maybe in 5 years' time. And this is the India that's building a one-stop shop home. They may never build another home later, right? So when we are assessing these homes, we're also mindful of the fact that a house without an air conditioner is very easy to prove on paper. It is energy efficient. But will it be in the long term? Because maintenance is key. That's something we assess. So we have our own terminologies. We've come up with this entire concept of virtual cooling for thermal comfort, where we take that into account, that if not today, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, if this house was to have active cooling, would it still be thermally comfortable? And based on that, we are helping them go better.
On that thought, because you touched upon innovation and technologies as well, maybe I'll move to answer here from the innovations point of view, and because also there's been a lot of talk on grant funding, philanthropy need as well for the sector. So what is that role? How can philanthropists deliver that role, not from innovation point of view as well as from a scaling point of view? So what would if you can share some perspectives from that?
So, just to give you that, we started with HCL Climate Force Fund, but how we, what are the solution sets we are trying to create, and for which communities, and how we started our journey. Let me just give you a background. See, we are all talking about sustainable cooling, and actually that is the built environment in which it comes to. And if we look into India, we are almost contributing to 1/3 of the emission, which is from the built environment. Now, major part is cooling. No, sustainable cooling is a requirement, but as we had been saying, that when we go for cooling, then there is a community which cannot afford is getting affected. And whatever heat we reject or throw out, that is creating a heat island effect. So, which is creating a danger for the community which cannot afford cooling. So, how to avoid that? So, that there are certain policy gaps which we had been observing right from ECBC, commercial, residential, as well as various other codes or policies which are coming, as well as there were some technological gaps. So I started my journey with ECBC and all, and then I was involved with the FATFL CTD program of UNIDO, where we had been surfacing TRL3, TRL4 kind of innovations, which were in sustainable cooling as well as cold chain, and then bringing them forward and giving them industry connect also, where we were helping them up to the finance stage, bringing that finally a product to the and to a startup. We have been successful in bringing few technologies which got to scale also. And then I got involved with TechMers program of IFC, where also we had been bringing TRL7 upward stage innovations into sustainable cooling and cold chain, and have been successful in implementing whether CO2 based cooling for cold stores or even CO2 based air conditioning, which has also been developed and now commercially available. And when even natural refrigerant to the extent that ammonia with biomass is a fuel. So those were got promoted. Now, when we started with India Climate Collaborative, wanted to do something, and as we think that philanthropic funding can be a catalytic to promote these kind of innovations to scale through and bring in commercial capital. So we thought, why not to try this and keep all this as a holistic approach. So we created a pool of advisors as well as some kind of other partners. And then we created a program which Roshni and other
through our HCL. She is funding that, and that program is basically looking into creating solution sets for 3 categories, which are low income group, medium income group, and high income group. So, sustainable cooling in the sense that people who cannot afford cooling, because UNEP is also doing something on passive side. There are various other things which are going. We have codes which are coming which do not think about passive. So there are various missing links. So we thought how we can create a solution which can be to all of the communities. So the solution set is that we take materials which are low carbon, and then some designers involved which are going to, because if we look at India Habitat Center also where we're sitting, if you go to the courtyard, you will find that heat island effect is mitigated there. And I was incidentally involved with that in 1987 when we started design of this project. So there are some more projects which are still there, which have been landmark, but why those could not be replicated. So based on that, we have created this program so that solution sets, not individual solutions to scale, solution sets for these 3 types of requirements can be created. And once those solution sets are there, then we may be working towards policy as well as certain technological gaps to be filled in, so that we can come out with requirements to be met of cooling, whether passive means. Because if you look at even energy codes for residential, it calls for that kind of insulation into the envelope for Bangalore also, which may or may not require.
I think we have
At least in the urban areas.
Yeah, I think it's important what you highlighted in terms of the understanding the need and also involving the stakeholder across the value chain is quite important. So maybe on that point, I'll just move to Naveen sir, to you in terms of working directly with the community on ground, especially with the farmer communities and everything. What has been our experience? What are the financing challenges that you have seen, and how we're addressing on that, building that infrastructure on the ground for cold chill sectors? I think that.
Yeah. As Shantaji has told, we are in community connect always. And that's very true. Whether it was starting of the SHG movement in the country, to farmer producer collectives, and to artisan collectives, and so on and so forth. Right now, we are engaged with, bringing in solutions to the primary agriculture cooperative society, which forms the basis of the cooperative movement in the country through digitalized processes and business diversification and so on and so forth. Coming back to this, I would, because a lot of people have given their inputs, right from Madam from Kerala, and incidentally, my chairman is right now is from Kerala, only Saji KV. So he belongs to Kerala. So taking that into account, a lot of things have been said about, as from Aga Khan Agency, habitation. That's very important. In fact, NABARD has been having a lot of collaboration, Aga Khan Foundation itself. So, or WRI also, you've been doing a lot of things like Priya, Madam was sharing on what we have found out, what you have observed, what are the pathways and all. So I give only 1 or 2 scenario. I don't know how long I'll take. I'll be very short, sir. In Assam, when I was last posted as general manager there, we have now come across places, the habitats of the, and Assam is famous for its Muga silk, and Muga is an outdoor silk. So there are Tasar and Muga, 2 silk which are reared outside. Tasar in parts of West Bengal, Jharkhand, parts of South Bihar and Telangana, and go like that, Odisha belt, that belt. Earlier it was called Naxal belt. So now those words are not, now it is called silk belt. And so that side. So Muga, why I took that, because a lot of farmers are now saying that the scenario is changing. the conducive environment or the ecosystem which helped Mughar here, it has dwindled. The whole process is going down. They are not able to rear. Why? Because temperature is increasing. So are we when we are talking at in the capital of the country in Delhi with such think tanks, are we looking at providing cooling solutions to that particular Muga farmer or not? And I come to scenario 2. Scenario 2 is heat stresses in milch animals. All of us who are not vegan or not, lactobacillus unfriendly, like that, so then we need a lot of milk and milk products, whether ice cream, mithai, and all that. So, 1 degree increase. I read a report, I think World Bank report itself, and in India also ICAR has done, I think Dairy Research, Karnal also has come up with a report. 1 degree increase would lead in downfall of milk production in the country by millions of liters. Right now, we are only the first or second producer worldwide in terms of milk. So when we are talking about cooling solutions, are we looking at dairy farmers? Similarly, it will be the case of fisheries farm, because when you're letting a Nabadian talk, we'll be definitely talking in those ecosystems. Here, I don't talk for myself, whether I have a cooling solutions at my home or not. I also look at vulnerabilities as far as the scheduled tribes are concerned, the last person in the resource map, that person, whether my handloom weaver who is sitting in a pit loom, whether he requires a cooling solution or not. उसके लिए तो एक पंखा ही काफी है जनाब. हम बहुत सारी चर्चाएं कर रहे हैं. We are looking at tremendous. I also feel that my household electricity bill should come down, even though I run 5 air conditioners at home. So that is what ये दिल चाहता हुआ है. लेकिन जब मैं community की बात करता हूँ, तो I look at these micro needs, because recently in Assam, because I have come recently from Assam, I'll get back to Assam only, though I have worked in Bihar and West Bengal and Uttar Pradesh and all, but I'll for the time being, we have supported renewable energy based solutions for cool chain for fish farmers. Assam is a tremendous state where biodiversity of fish species is also maintained. That means they are local when they consume as well as when they they harvest fish, or they go into fishing. They always look at not rohu, katla and mrgel, but they look at indigenous varieties. So those varieties are also getting onto the downtrend of production because of increasing water temperature. Because a lot of people talk about the dissolved oxygen in the water leading to the production level coming down, but seldom people come up with this case. Temperature increase in the water is also causing, because now you see it is raining and causing devastation, whether it is Punjab, whether it is Haryana, parts of Himachal, Uttarakhand, and we are in Delhi bracing up for Yamuna to rise above the floodplains. That is how it is, because rains are coming in huge quantities in a very short spread of time. When we were a child, it was all spread across 1 month, 1.5 months. But now even the gods are saying, no, we'll do overtime and finish it off. So, okay, the vulnerability is increased. I'll just conclude on that because there'll be some other questions also.
Yes.
To litigate these, NABARD has been, as I said, I gave you an example, that solar-based cooling systems. Similar for the milch cattle also, whether it is development of the state, because we are looking at not exactly providing the cooling, but indirect or passive cooling, as some World Bank madam was Afsana. Yeah, she was telling about. So we have at NABARD now NABARD Green Lending Facility. We work with farmer producer companies where we are developing their ecosystems. And last but not the least, the formal financial institutions are onboarded, whether it is through NABARD Green Taxonomy or Reserve Bank of India's Green Financing Bids, or models that are being set up as I think Anshuman was saying that in Bihar cooperatives, they have gone for a pack house. I immediately told him that NABARD with Department of Cooperation, world's largest grain storage program is being run through Primary Agriculture Cooperative Society. So that model can be taken up for providing the cooling solutions or storage with temperature control modules.
Sure.
So these are
Yeah.
what.
No, thank you so much. I think understanding that specific use case challenges on the ground is quite important as well. So maybe just in the interest of time, maybe what I'll request is, we have fantastic audience also sitting with us who can interact over lunch with all the panelists that are there and answer some of the questions also that we have. Maybe Sumit, I'll pass on to you for looking at closing the session here.
Yeah, no, I think this was a very, enriching discussion. We were, we started very tight on time, but we are also clear that they will stop serving lunch if we don't start now. So since we have the benefit of this room and everyone being here, we would encourage all our participants to please engage with the speakers directly over their meals. But, it's very difficult to sort of summarize all of this. But I guess, just, few key points which I was, just kept jotting down. I think the point made by a few people, actually a few, about the quality of solutions and the credibility of them being functional for this segment of the population we are working towards is key. And I think we also kept hearing about the cooling being a very big development issue. It shaves off, several points from your GDP. The point that Joyita was also making. And how to sort of, when the private sector, folks talk about the quantifiability, I think that's where some of our work on the research side comes in, wherein we actually look at how by getting impacted, what the impacts on the ground are, what kind of methods we are using to assess the impact. That knowledge has to come to the forefront. So we got by preparing the summary of this roundtable, and we will be circulating it to all the key discussants. But we really value your time. Thank you for spending these 75 minutes or so with us. Please, lunch is open. Please, join us for lunch. So before we break for lunch, I like primary last to make.
I just missed one point that the about the most vulnerable groups in the society, like the children, the aged, and the disabled.
Right.
The heat, the cooling issues are mostly with them because we are experiences from this autism centers and attached to this course, and also with the Anganwadis, and also for the elderly people who are mostly inside the homes all the time. So these are the three groups we have to be very treat separately, or we have to focus on the effect of cooling and put it into the projects and other concerns of these three groups. Yeah, because from the Anganwadis and also from other places, we are getting this type of a feedback of the problem of heating issues.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
you. Bring a chair and please join us for lunch. And by 1:55 or so, we will move to the Stein Auditorium for the next plenary session that we'll have.
The plenary.
Yeah, plenary coming up. Yeah.